welcome to the deep dive. Okay, I want you to picture this for a second. A truly world-class product, something super sought after, right? But it's not made in some huge historic facility. Nope. It's born in a space that's, well, maybe no bigger than your average garage. And that's the kind of surprising reality behind what we call garage wine. So today we're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating, almost rebellious movement in the wine world. Our mission for you is simple. Cut through the jargon, explore where it came from, the philosophy behind it, and honestly, it's pretty surprising global reach. We've looked at everything from, historical accounts to detailed regional stuff, winemaking notes, the works, and we're ready to unpack the key takeaways for you.
Yeah, and what's so interesting here, I think, is how this simple term, Vigno de Garage and Vin de Garage, it's not just a name. It actually represents a whole philosophy. It's basically challenging centuries of tradition. It puts authenticity and maximum quality way ahead of mass production. It's really about the soul in the bottle, not how big the cellar is.
Okay, so let's nail this down first. What exactly are we talking about with garage wine? Because it sounds like it's definitely more than just, the physical place. If I'm just picturing some barrels in a dusty garage, I feel like I'm missing the point, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the term definitely brings the small-scale, hands-on image to mind, which is often true. But really, at its heart, garage wine defines a whole approach to making wine. It's pretty much the direct opposite of big industrial vinification. The core idea is this relentless drive for the absolute best quality, for authenticity. And the winemaker has total, almost obsessive control over every single step. You could call them author's wines. They come from passion, a specific vision. It's all artisanal work. And the rule is minimal intervention. Let the place, the terroir, and the fruit speak for themselves.
That idea of total control, and maybe a bit of defiance against the big guys, it sounds kind of romantic almost. But, wine is such a traditional industry.
Yeah.
Did this rebellion face actual pushback? Did the established estates try to shut it down, or did they just ignore it until it got too big?
That's a great question. And it was, well, a bit of both, really. Initially, yeah, there was skepticism, some outright disdain, people thinking it was just amateur hour. But the fascinating thing is the quality spoke for itself. And the market demand, it just exploded. Suddenly, you couldn't ignore them. It proved that amazing wine didn't have to come from a grand chateau with a long history. Garage wines became about customization, exclusivity, totally different from the reliable, maybe sometimes boring uniformity you get with huge volumes. They're all about valuing the terroir, that specific magic of the soil and climate, the purity of the grapes, and, the actual hands-on work of the winemaker. Every bottle really tells a story. It's like a liquid snapshot of that producer's soul and where it came from.
Okay, so this whole idea kicks off as a kind of rebellion, right? In Bordeaux, the heartland of French wine. Let's unpack that.
Yeah.
How did it start there in the early 90s? Was it Bordeaux's rigid nature that ironically made it the perfect launch pad?
Precisely. Yeah, if you look at the bigger picture, Bordeaux is, world famous for its strict classifications, its traditions going back centuries. That actually made it the perfect stage for this kind of disruption. It wasn't just passion. It felt almost like a quiet protest against the big classified chateau. Some people felt they'd become too focused on volume, on consistency, maybe losing some individual spark. And the story that really captures this, the one everyone points to, is Château Le Pen in Pomerol. This place was, and still is, tiny, just 2.7 hectares. Production was minuscule, almost secret, but the quality, extraordinary. And the style, really opulent, concentrated. It just blew critics and collectors away. Suddenly, it was fetching prices like the most famous Bordeaux wines. Le Pen basically proved value wasn't just about history or land size. It was about what was in the glass.
Wow, that's incredible to get that kind of status from such a tiny plot. Okay, so I know the term garagiste itself became the label for these guys. Who actually came up with that?
Right, that name, garagiste, that would be Jean-Luc Thunevin. He and his wife, Muriel, started Château Valandraud in Saint-Emilion back in '91. And their cellar, it genuinely looked like a garage. Small, basic, nothing fancy. But Thunevin had this really clear ambition to make a totally different kind of Saint-Emilion. Something concentrated, modern, super fruity. And the small scale wasn't a drawback, it was their advantage. It meant they could be obsessive about every little detail, like super strict grape sorting, only the absolute best berries made it in. And they used a lot of new oak barrels for aging, which was quite modern then. Valandraud just took off. It was powerful proof he could create a cult wine, totally outside the official rankings. And actually, the quality was so good, it eventually got promoted in 2012 to Premier Grand Cru Classe B, a huge win for a garagiste.
So it sounds like a confluence of things, really. The passionate producers, the quality. What was the sort of external push that helped these small rebels get noticed so quickly on a global scale?
Yeah, that brings us to a really key piece of the puzzle, the context. The rise of powerful wine critics, especially Robert M. Parker Jr. from the US, was absolutely crucial. Parker was a game changer. His influence wasn't just about scores, though those matter hugely. It was about championing a certain style of wine. He liked them big, opulent, packed with rape fruit, concentrated, wines that delivered immediate impact. And that style was often exactly what these garagistes were producing, sometimes intentionally, sometimes just because of the small scale and meticulous work. His high scores could take an unknown producer and make them an international star overnight. So Parker's taste, combined with his huge readership, kind of created this massive demand for these more modern, intense wines, inadvertently giving these par producers a huge platform. It showed that breaking the rules could be just as valid as following them.
Okay, we've touched on the philosophy. I'm really interested in the how. You mentioned minimal intervention. That sounds kind of hands-off, but how does that actually work in practice? Starting in the vineyard, what does that look like?
It's a neat paradox, isn't it? Minimal intervention in the vineyard isn't about doing nothing. It's more about being a really attentive guardian, observing, facilitating nature, not forcing a style. It begins with what they call precision viticulture, basically understanding each little patch of vines intimately, studying the soil, the moisture, how vigorous the vines are, then applying really tailored, care-specific watering, feeding, pruning. The soil itself is treated like a living thing. So you see things like cover crops between the rows, no-till farming, lots of composting. It's all about building healthy soil life.
And the grapes themselves, you said quality over quantity is key. How do they achieve that?
Absolutely. The mantra is basically produce less fruit to get more concentration. So that means rigorous yield control. They'll do things like strategically removing leaves called defoliation to get the right amount of sun on the grapes. They'll do green pruning, which is cutting off excess shoots early in the season. And cluster thinning, actually removing whole bunches of grapes. So the vine puts all its energy into ripening the ones that are left. All this detailed work ensures the grapes ripen perfectly. They get the sugars, sure, but also the acids and those vital phenolic compounds, the things that give wine its color, flavor, and structure. And beyond just quality, there's a big move towards sustainable methods to organic biodynamic farming. It's about fostering life in the vineyard.
Okay, so you get these perfect grapes, tended with incredible care. Then they come into the cellar. How does minimal intervention apply there? Surely you can't just let it happen.
Right, exactly. This is where the winemaker's choices are still crucial, even if they're about not doing things. So inside the cellar, those perfect grapes are handled with, maximum respect. Fermentations, mostly spontaneous. That means using the native yeasts that are naturally on the grapes and floating around in the cellar. No added commercial yeast. This gives the wine really unique aromas and textures, a genuine fingerprint of the place and the year. They also use sulfites very carefully, keeping levels low or sometimes avoiding them altogether if the fruit is healthy enough. They rely on the quality of the grapes and careful handling for stability. And another big thing, they generally avoid heavy filtration and clarification. You know those processes that make wine look crystal clear? They can actually strip out important stuff, polyphenols, proteins, things that add complexity, body, and help the wine age well. So instead, they prefer natural sedimentation, just letting the solids gently fall to the bottom over time. The wines might end up with a tiny bit of haze, but they're packed with character and depth. And a subtle microoxygenation, maybe from using things like concrete eggs or clay amphoras, that helps development without being aggressive.
It's so clear that terroir is the star here. But with all these deliberate choices, the specific pruning, the type of barrel or tank, how do they balance that? How do you ensure it's the land speaking and not just the winemaker's signature style overpowering it?
That's a really insightful question. It's exactly the balancing act these producers perform. The absolute driving force is this deep passion for letting the terroir shine through authentically. They often see themselves as explorers, hunting for vineyards with something special, maybe a unique soil type, perfect sun exposure, a little microclimate. The goal is definitely not to copy some popular style. It's to make a wine that tastes unmistakably of that specific place. So each bottle should tell the story of its origin. The winemaker's decisions, like the ones you mentioned, are meant to amplify that story, to frame it, not rewrite it. And that total control we talked about, it runs all the way through. From vineyard management, the pruning, managing the leaf canopy, always harvesting by hand, often doing a double sort of the grapes, once in the field, again at the winery, to ensure only perfect berries get in right into the cellar. In the winery, choosing the aging vessel is huge. It really shapes the final wine. Will it be oak barrels, which cut French, American, Hungarian, what toast level? Or maybe stainless steel for pure fruit? Concrete eggs for that subtle oxygen exchange and texture? Or even ancient clay amphoras for minerality and different oxygen interaction? It's this complete freedom, combined with deep knowledge and respect for their specific plot of land, that lifts garage wine into, well, something like an art form. The winemaker is the interpreter, not the dictator.
Okay, so this wasn't just a Bordeaux thing. You mentioned it went global. How did this garagiste idea translate or adapt as it spread to different countries, different wine cultures?
Oh, yeah. It really caught fire globally. It inspired winemakers everywhere to kind of look closer at their own backyards. In France, outside Bordeaux, you saw places like Château de Pressac and Le Mondot pick up similar ideas. In Burgundy, it's less about new oak and more about tiny batches, micro cuvées focusing intensely on their famous individual vineyard plots, their climates. Think producers like Domaine Jean-Marie Fourier or Domaine Arnaud Ant, known for incredible purity, or Domaine Prieuré Roche, a real pioneer in biodynamics there. Then you go to the Rhone Valley or other spots, and you see garagistes championing forgotten local grapes, autochthonous varieties like Roussanne or Marsanne, names like Domaine Clip and Cornas making intense Syrah, or Château Montus in Madeiran, really pushing the boundaries with the tannic grape.
Interesting. And Italy, with its incredible variety of grapes and regions, how did the movement take shape there?
Italy's take on it is often about going back to their roots, focusing on unique Italian grapes, sometimes ones that were almost lost. So in Piemonte, maybe exploring Barbera or Dolcetto beyond just Barolo and Barbaresco. In Tuscany, playing with Sangiovese in new ways or even international grapes. Sicily has become a real hotbed, especially around Mount Etna. Producers like Frank Cornelissen or Ariana Occhipinti are making waves with really natural artisanal wines from those volcanic soils. And Campania, too, down south, has people doing amazing things with grapes like Aglianico, Fiano, Greco, often from high-altitude spots.
What about Spain? Such a strong wine tradition there. Did they embrace this or resist it?
Spain had a massive revival in certain areas, driven by the spirit. Look at Priorat. It was almost forgotten. Then guys like René Barbier at Clos Mogador, Alvaro Palacios with L'Ermita, Daphne Glorian at Clos Erasmus, they brought it roaring back. They focused on old vine Garnacha and Cariñena on those unique Licorella slate soils. The wines are incredibly intense, mineral, often made using heroic viticulture because the slopes are so steep. Ribera del Duero also became a center for this. You have Peter Sissek making the legendary Dominio de Pinguis from old Tempranillo vines using biodynamics, and others like Mariano Garcia, who was Vega Sicilia's winemaker for years with his projects Alto and Mauro, or Jorge Monzon at Dominio de l'Aguila. Really diverse styles, but all super high-quality, small production.
And the New World, the United States, for instance, did it feel different there, maybe more entrepreneurial?
Absolutely. In California, you see it reflected in the whole boutique winery and cult cab phenomenon in Napa Valley. These are often highly concentrated Cabernet Sauvignons, very exclusive, very expensive. There's even a Garagiste festival that specifically celebrates these smaller, often more experimental producers. Take someone like Two Shepherds. They're known for a really minimalist, natural approach, native yeasts, neutral barrels focusing on Rhone varieties often, or Sutro Wine Co., where the owner, Alice Warneck Sutro, is an artist and viticulturist expressing her family's volcanic vineyard land in Alexander Valley with minimal intervention. And up in Oregon, there's a huge culture around small batch Pinot Noir, especially from the volcanic Jory soils. Lots of passion for really expressive, site-specific wines.
Australia too, right? But maybe with a slightly different vibe, more collaborative perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Australia really embraced the term small batch, especially in places like the Barossa Valley. And you're right, while you have individual stars, there's often a more collaborative feel. Groups like the Artisans of Barossa are a great example. You've got wineries like Spinifex Wines mixing old vine traditions with fresh ideas to get real authenticity. Or Seabrook Wines, where they're carrying on a family legacy that goes back over a century, but applying it to really focused small batch wines.
And finally, South America. How did this play out there? Maybe mixing tradition with newer tech.
South America's scene is really dynamic. In Argentina, you have this exciting new wave of winemakers, people like Emmanuel Ortiz, who literally started in a friend's garage with nothing, or Santiago Stradella, who's even using AI and NFTs for wine labels. They're exploring tiny plots, micro terroirs, going for pure fruit expression, sometimes using technology alongside tradition. And in Chile, the Garage Wine Co., GW Co., is a perfect example. Founded by Pilar Miranda and Derek Mossman back in 2001. They're all about finding and reviving old vineyards, often farmed by small growers. Their whole ethos is small by design. Really artisanal methods, hand pressing, native yeasts. And they're deeply committed to regenerative agriculture. Things like dry farming, cover crops, even using horses. Plus ethical sourcing and sustainability, recycled bottles, minimal packaging, upcycled tanks. Their diverse team, with Pilar Miranda's leadership, really drives innovation too.
Okay, so with all this incredible attention to detail, this specific philosophy, when you actually get to taste a garage wine, what should you expect? What really sets them apart in the glass?
Right, the tasting experience. Well, the first thing that usually hits you is the intensity. There's a real concentration, a complexity that's undeniable. Visually, they often have deep, dark colors, really dense looking. Then on the nose, wow, they can be explosive. Lots of rich, dark fruit cassis, blackberry jam, maybe plum, often exotic spice notes, maybe some balsamic character, and sometimes this lovely, earthy undertone like tobacco leaf or old leather. Then you taste it, and you feel that concentration again. Significant tannins, but hopefully ripe and well managed, lots of fruit density. They often have a real presence, a volume in the mouth. And this is key for the great ones, that power isn't just brute force, it should be balanced. There needs to be a vibrant acidity cutting through the richness, giving it freshness, making the finish long, and often you'll find a distinct minerality like whetstone, graphite, sometimes even a slight saltiness that really ties it back to its specific terroir.
So how do you judge the real quality then, beyond just being big and powerful? Because intense doesn't always mean great, right?
Exactly. That's a crucial point. For someone evaluating these wines, like a sommelier, sheer power isn't the end goal. True quality lies in how well that intensity is integrated. Is it elegant despite its power? Does it have freshness? Does it genuinely taste like somewhere specific, showing off its terroir? The best garage wines have layers. They change in the glass as they get air, revealing new nuances. And, importantly, they evolve in the bottle over time. Which brings us to longevity. Most of these wines are built to last. That combination of strong tannic structure, good acidity, and dense fruit acts like a natural preservative. The really top examples can age beautifully for decades. They develop those complex tertiary aromas, think truffle, forest floor, subtle savory notes, and the tannins soften and melt into the wine. It can be a profound experience.
So looking ahead, what's the future hold for garage wine? And what's its lasting impact, its legacy? It feels like this interesting paradox, super exclusive, yet really influential.
That's a great way to frame it. Yeah, the market itself is definitely a niche, highly exclusive. Because the production is so tiny and the demand from collectors and serious wine lovers is often huge, prices can get very high. So they become these sought-after gems, sometimes even investments. And wine tourism around them is different too. It's not about grand tours. It's often a chance to actually meet the person making the wine, see their small workspace, really understand their philosophy. It creates a much more personal connection. But there are definitely big challenges. That small scale makes them incredibly vulnerable. One bad frost, one hailstorm, a drought year. It can wipe out a huge chunk of their income. There's no large volume to cushion the blow. Competition is fierce globally, and they often don't have big marketing budgets or distribution networks. Just staying afloat economically and figuring out how to pass the winery on to the next generation, these are constant hurdles. It takes incredible passion and often some creative business thinking.
It really sounds like they're always navigating tricky waters. Have you encountered stories, maybe, of a garagiste facing one of those tough vintages like a frost, and how they managed to adapt or innovate to pull through?
Oh, absolutely. I remember hearing about a producer in Chile, actually. They lost a huge portion of their old vine Carignan to a late frost one year. Devastating. But they had these few clusters left, incredibly concentrated. They decided almost on a whim to ferment this tiny amount in some old terracotta amphoras they had lying around, barely used. It wasn't about making money that year. It was about salvaging something, the essence of the vintage. And that tiny experimental batch, it ended up being one of their most talked about, highly allocated wines ever. It just showed that incredible resilience and ingenuity that defines the movement. So yeah, despite all those challenges, the impact they've had is undeniable. It really is. The legacy, it's genuinely transformative. They've put real pressure on the whole wine industry, frankly. Forced everyone to rethink quality, to value authenticity more, maybe push back against just making safe, predictable wines for the masses. They highlighted the importance of artisanal work, of that meticulous care, and they continue to inspire winemakers all over the world to really dig deep into their own terroir, understand their land, and make wines that have a strong sense of identity.
Mm.
By challenging the old ways and proving that greatness can come from humble beginnings, they've really cemented themselves as like the cutting edge of wine. They're still redefining what modern winemaking can be.
So as you can tell, garage wine is way more than just a catchy name. It's really a philosophy, isn't it? A kind of rebellion, a testament to pure passion, quality, and being authentic. It's all about pushing limits and showing that amazing things can come from the most unexpected corners. Now, just to leave you with something to think about, what garage innovations maybe in your own field or industry are challenging the established players right now? Or maybe, how could this idea of minimal intervention, this focus on authenticity, apply to other crafts you love, or even just choices you make day to day? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope you discovered something fascinating today.